Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast presented by Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. We are part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Kevin Ingram. We will talk about several Vanderbilt sports, including volleyball, which the university announced this week it will be adding. Kevin appears on the guest line that's presented by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call. That number 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Now on to our interview with Kevin Ingram. Kevin Ingram is one of the two play-by-play voices for Vanderbilt Sports. He joins us today. Kevin, a lot to talk about. Hope you're doing well at what is a busy time of the year for all of us.
Yeah, it has been a really busy time, Chris. We just finished up with spring football. We had the spring game the other day, and, of course, baseball right in the middle of the conference season starting the second half this weekend. And some other big announcements here on the Vanderbilt campus. So, yeah, it's been a really interesting time here for sure.
Yeah, we're going to bounce around and get to all of those. Let's start with baseball, though. Huge series coming up for the Commodores at Kentucky.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think everybody around here felt a little better about things after winning 2 out of 3 against Florida over the weekend and really having a chance to get the sweep on Sunday. Jack Bulger hit that home run in the 9th inning and tied the game and got to extra innings. Florida ended up getting out of town with 1 win. But it feels like things are going better for this team. They've won 4 out of 5 over the last week and a half or so. And now you start the second half of conference play, which is really weird to say. It feels like the season's flown past. But you're 15 games in. You got 15 to go. You go to Lexington to play Kentucky. And it always feels to me like Vanderbilt plays pretty well when they go up there. So we'll see how it goes. But, again, it just felt like that was a really big series win after some not-so-successful weekends in the previous weeks. But Tim Corbin talked about wanting to play some close games and win some close games, and this program was able to do that last weekend.
Well, it feels like if they could just tread water till they get to past exams, that's when the team always picks it up.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately for them, Arkansas and LSU are pretty tough series after that. I'm guessing, let's see, when are they done with exams? Do we know for sure?
I got to think here in a couple weeks. And Tim Corbin was talking about that too on our show on Monday night. He said, it always makes a difference, especially for like the first year guys, when the semester's over and exams are done and you're done with school and you can really focus and put all your attention into playing baseball. He says he always sees, and it's noticeable for sure, you see guys get rolling maybe a little bit after that part of the year is done. But yeah, that won't be too far away here in a few weeks.
Where do you sense they're going with their weekend pitching rotation?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, Chris McIlvain and Carter Holton are pretty much the first 2 guys. That Sunday starter has been a kind of a bit of a work in progress throughout the season. We've seen them mix in some different guys. We've seen Bryce Cunningham get a start or 2. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what they do on Sunday. I gotta for me, the temptation would be to maybe throw Devin Futrell in for a Sunday start. But he's been so good in those midweek games. You don't want to disrupt what's going on there on those Tuesday games. Now, this coming week, there's not going to be a Tuesday game. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see when we get to Sunday what they decide to do. But, boy, Devin's been fantastic in these midweek games. And, it feels like they've kind of been searching for that guy. You thought at one point, well, maybe Patrick Riley's a guy or maybe Cunningham's a guy. But we'll see. I mean, again, you got 5 more weeks of conference play, and maybe that will become a little more apparent as we move into this final stretch of the SEC.
Yeah, it sets up nicely to use him this weekend, given they don't have the midweek game. Then you can slide him back in the Louisville game next week, which will be big. And so maybe some opportunity to mix and match based on how the schedule is breaking for them the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe so. And, boy, it just doesn't feel like there's much of a breather. Texas A&M will be here next weekend. And you mentioned that Louisville, that midweek game. And that's not just any midweek game. That's always one that's a little more interesting than the others. And then, you got that final stretch of SEC play, which is going to have a lot of ranked teams. So you think about it, you still got Georgia, you got Arkansas, you got LSU, A&M, as I mentioned, coming up next week. So, the schedule, it felt like it was front-loaded with good teams, and it definitely feels like it's back-loaded with good teams.
Yeah, maybe some good news here, too, is it seems like they're getting healthier. Nick Maldonado has gotten back. He's throwing harder than he was. Tate Colwick is at least playing. I do wonder about the hand at times, but it's not been enough to take him out recently, which has not always been the case. I don't know if Sam Laboki is on the radar to pitch again. I don't think that's a topic that's come up in a while. What do you know about any of those things?
I don't know anything about Sam Laboki. I know as far as like Tate, he's been back in. I know he's kind of battled that hand and wrist, and it's been great to see Nick Maldonado back out there. I mean, going into the season, I mean, he was a major part of what was going to happen with this team in 2022. He's a preseason All-American. He's pitched in every situation when it comes to not just the regular season, but the postseason. He was so good last year, and yeah, you hope, back half of the season here, he's only made like 5 appearances this season, and he started out in the weekend rotation. He missed a big chunk of the season from the time they played at Hawaii in early March all the way until just last weekend when he returned against Florida. I thought he looked like he threw the ball really well in the inning. We saw him on Tuesday against Tennessee Tech, and yeah, as you say, that velocity's back up. And Tim Corbin talked too about being that relief pitcher with the short memory like you have to have when you pitch in that spot. Gave up the home run on Saturday. He actually ended up getting the win in that game, but then came right back and you got to flush all that and get ready for your next performance. And it felt like he did that on Tuesday. But I was very pleased and happy to see Maldonado back on the mound.
Do you get the sense that his role is going to be back in that in-game / high leverage relief spot?
Yeah, for Nick, I mean, he's such a versatile guy. I mean, we saw last year you can use him in so many different roles. You can use him to finish out a game if you want him to throw 2 or 3 innings. We saw him be a bridge guy to kind of be that setup man for Murphy last year. Just wherever you put him in, we've even seen him get a couple starts this season. But love his stuff. Good fastball, throws a cutter, and good breaking stuff too. So yeah, it was exciting to see him back on the mound and kind of flush out the one on Saturday and get out there and throw an effective 9th inning on Tuesday. And I got to think he's going to be used a whole bunch more as we enter these final weeks of conference play.
It's funny how seasons develop because going into the year, I think one of the questions we all had was in game, right? And Maldonado was a natural for that role, and then suddenly he's a weekend guy. Well, now he's back to the end of the pen, and you didn't know where Thomas Schultz fit and didn't know if he had closer stuff. Well, he's been pretty good. In fact, he's been very dependable, and he and Nick are 2 different type of pitchers with different stuff, and Schultz keeps the ball on the ground. Maldonado just dominates you with that cutter, fastball combo when it's working. Neither of them walk a lot of guys. And then you've got Christian Little, who's kind of a wild card too, and we'll talk about him next, but he's also been used, in high leverage late inning situations. I feel like all of a sudden, presuming Maldonado is what he was last year, that's a team strength. It's gone from a question mark to, hey, that's a pretty good spot to be in with those guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I really like the way Thomas Schultz has moved into his role at the back end of the bullpen. I think when he first arrived here a year or 2 ago, you thought, okay, this guy's going to move into the starting rotation to be a weekend starter, but that hasn't really been what it's come to for him. And he's looked really comfortable in that role and has really pitched well. I think with him and Maldonado and a few of the other guys you have that you can use, I know you're going to ask about Christian Little in a minute, but it feels like those, and it seems like every year we talk about that going into the season. Okay, how are these bullpen roles going to be defined as we move forward? And you get into the season a little deeper, maybe 2/3 of the way like we are now, and it's like, okay, I see how this is going to fit together, at least how you hope it might fit together. And Scott Brown and Tim Corbin are so good at figuring all these things out over the course of a season.
Yeah, with Little, where does this go next? Where does this settle by season's end?
Well, I mean, we've seen him, in that bullpen role, a late inning guy, and just electric stuff. I know people will see the home run that he gave up against Florida in the 10th inning and see that he took the loss, but overall he pitched really well.
Yeah.
I mean, he pitched 3 innings in that game, and he looked terrific. That fastball just pops. I mean, it jumps out of his hand maybe more than anybody, more than anybody on this roster, but close to it anyway, up near the top. And you think about him, how young he still is. I think he's still just 18 years old out there playing in these situations. And, he's been around and been through all the different things that go into a long postseason run too. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like he's going to be a key factor. And I thought he pitched really well against Florida on Sunday.
Well, and I think the big stat for him, and I'll look up overall games, but I believe he's not walked a guy in 8 innings of SEC work. And to me, that points to, in my mind, and I know they try to be careful, right? Because you want to bring a guy along slowly. If he's competent where he is, then maybe you take a small step than rather a big step. But I think where they are, to me, with the control part seeming to be down, you almost have to start trying to see if he can get the ball to start games.
Yeah, they used him in that role in the midweek last year. I mean, basically was a starter on the Tuesday games a whole lot of the season last year. I don't know if that's in the plans for him this time around, but you certainly are getting to a point with him where you feel very comfortable putting him out there. And we've seen him used in not just some sort of back-end mop-up role, but in key spots in these games, including the chance to sweep a series against Florida this past weekend. He was out there at the end of the game. So, yeah, I've really been impressed with his progress throughout his sophomore year.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing, it's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible. Yeah, I'm trying to find walk numbers on him for this year, but I mean that's the big thing. You're gonna get hit, especially the way people swing the bats these days.
Yeah,
giving up the home run didn't really bother me. Yeah, he's pitched 16 innings, he's walked 4, and he's only hit a batter. Those are pretty good control numbers. Last year he had some issues with extra base hits. He's given up 1 double, 1 home run. I just don't see anything here not to like with him.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, that's where pitchers get into trouble. You walk guys or you put guys on base somehow, and then you give up the home run, and that's where the real problems start. But, yeah, you can live with a solo home run here or there, which really, I mean, that was the only, as you said, that's the only one he's given up this season. But, yeah, it's just a maturation of a young pitcher, and I think we've probably seen that over the course of last year as a freshman and this year as a sophomore.
All right, let's talk spring game. What stood out to you as you watched that and watched parts of spring practice?
Yeah, I was out there for several practices. I know you were there for pretty much all of it. Spring game on Saturday, it was fun being out there and just seeing them play in the stadium. I don't know that you can take away a lot of really solid concrete things from the spring football season, but as far as the game on Saturday, I thought Will Shepherd looked terrific, the receiver. I like Justin Harris at corner. He made some plays, had an interception. The quarterback situation is really interesting to me because you got the two guys who've been here for a couple years, and Mike Wright and Ken Seals, and then you have A.J. Swan, who, I mean, he comes in there. You talk about a guy who looks the part playing quarterback. I mean, he looks like one of those big dudes that step out there on an SEC Saturday, but as far as when it comes down to actually playing and having the games and divvying up those reps, I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to play out. But yeah, I thought all three of those guys had good moments, and you had a couple of passes that they probably like to have back. Mike Wright showed off the wheels, especially early in the game, and had a 50-yard run, so showed you what he can do. But yeah, I thought there were good moments, and there were growing moments for guys on both sides of the football. And again, it's one of those games that was, they played real football for about a half, and then the rest of the day was a running clock. So it wasn't, a totally simulated game. But, the one thing that stood out to me in watching practice, and I may have said this on our podcast before, is I felt like going and watching practice, I was watching something from maybe later on in the year, like getting ready to have a game week or, a camp practice for sure, where the tempo and the intensity of it felt that way, and not just out there for spring ball going through the motions.
Yeah, watching them last August was just difficult at times. There was no offensive line cohesion or good play, and I don't want to make too much of this, right, because they had a lot of defensive linemen out, but it feels like everything's more together. The other thing that has sort of stood out to me is you looked at them last August and you're going, well, identifiable playmakers on this team. There just weren't a lot. And the ones that you had were maybe Cam Johnson and Ben Bresnahan, who didn't get used. You had Seals. Well, he was running for his life most of the season. On defense, you just didn't know at all what they had, right? Now you look forward to this time, and you look at linebacker. You've got, Ethan Barr and Anthony Orji can play a little bit. Kane Patterson showed some things. You mentioned Justin Harris. I thought Jalen Mahoney had a terrific spring. You look on the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned Will Shepherd. You've mentioned, three quarterbacks have shown things at times. You had Ray Davis, who didn't play, but Patrick Smith showed some things. Now, look, it's Vandy on Vandy, and I'm not making big conclusions. I still think it's going to be a struggle probably for them just to win 2 or 3 games, but you feel like you saw progress in terms of player and maybe scheme development too.
Yeah, I definitely felt like you saw progress. I thought it was interesting to hear Clark Lee talk about those quarterbacks and where they are. And he was talking about A.J. Swan and said, yeah, he's brand new and he's just like learning all he can on the fly here, as a first-year player. But he also said that with these quarterbacks going back to last year, it's like they were freshmen all over again, too, learning a whole new scheme. And some of the conversations I had is like, especially with some people on offense, the continuity of last year to this year, they felt like really served them well, not having to learn an entirely new system, because some of those guys have played in multiple systems. If you're a little bit older player and you've been around here for a couple seasons, and I think, and the folks on the offensive line, including A.J. Blasick, the offensive line coach, I think he definitely appreciated that continuity from last season to this season, and that's a position group where you really have to have that, and that's really valuable. Guys playing together for a longer period of time, and the cohesion that you have to have in that unit, even if you're plugging in some other guys at times, you have to have that for that group to be successful.
The other thing, and I was looking up his name because I always forget how to pronounce it, but you had Steven Sanianola out there a lot. You had Daniel Martin out there a lot this spring. You mentioned Swan getting some reps. I feel like this was a spot, and you saw some of the offensive linemen get some reps too. It feels like this is a spot where some of those early enrollees came in and got a chance to play a good bit in practice and maybe have got a shot to make an impact for them.
Yeah, I always kind of debate how I feel about, guys leaving high school early and enrolling in college and coming and getting started on their careers. But the upside of that is certainly they're ahead in the football part of it, no question about it. I mean, they'll be ahead of the players who are coming in this summer to get started on their careers. But yeah, having that opportunity to go through spring practice and get a little understanding of what it's all about and the intensity and the level that you have to play to be successful in this conference and high level college football can do nothing but serve them well.
Anything else on football that stood out to you that we saw in the spring?
Again, I think just the intensity of it is what really impressed me, and enjoyed a couple conversations with Clark Lee. We had him on our Monday night show, just talking about what it's been like for him going from year 1 to year 2, and just how the comfort level is a little bit different. And he feels like players are the ones that have been there last year and moving into this season for Team 2 have definitely bought in and kind of setting the expectations and the standards of the program. They made progress in that. I mean, who knows what it'll look like, as far as translating into wins and those sorts of things. But I think he feels like this program is definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, the buy-in, I think, is important. You definitely feel when you talk to them privately and off the record that they've got more of that from the players this year. And I think they're right on that. The other thing, Kevin, I think you're seeing more former players at practice. One criticism, Derek Mason, this is not here to bag on Derek, but I don't think they were necessarily made to feel welcome for the most part. I know that's a big effort of his outreach.
Oh, no doubt about it. I saw more former players at practice than you had in a long time. And yeah, it's cool to see those guys. And, when you have a guy like Earl Bennett around the program who's, one of the best and most popular players in the history of the program. And that kind of helps attract some of those former players to come back. We've seen Chris Williams a lot over here the last a couple of years. But it was cool to see all those guys. In the spring game on Saturday, you had not just recent former players, you had a lot of players from years past. And to me, those guys are such resources for your program. I never understand for the life of me why any program in any sport wouldn't want former players, especially the ones who've been really successful, to come back and be part of things and be around and be resources for the guys you have, and just continue to feel like they're part of things in the program where they played.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about under Derek, but that was a common complaint that I heard, and you probably did as well. But moving on to something else, pretty interesting week at Vanderbilt. Not every week you add a sport. Vanderbilt added volleyball this week, and I think that's one that a lot of people feel like they've got a shot to be pretty good in pretty quickly just because of the academic nature and lots of other things. Of course, the city and all the things that we know Vanderbilt uses to market itself with. But that was not an unexpected development. I remember thinking when they announced the stuff, and you're like, man, they've got that practice court wide open in Memorial after they're building the stuff with the basketball gym, which we'll talk about next. I remember my first thought was I'd heard some talk about volleyball. I bet you that's where they use that space to play or practice, and sure enough, here it is.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, Chris, volleyball is really popular around here. I mean, you think about the high school programs you have and the travel teams, and I've known parents who've had kids that played volleyball, and I mean, they went all over to play, and you see it played at a really high level. And I think adding this program to Vanderbilt is going to be a real plus. It's supposed to come online in the 25-26 academic year. They'll hire a coach a little bit later on this year, but as far as the facilities and everything, it feels like it's going to work out about right, because around the time they have the new basketball facility open, and then you'll have the volleyball getting going, and they'll be able to slide right into those the basketball facilities as they're being used now at Memorial Gym. So that'll be cool to see that sport on that court. And the SEC, really, as you see in pretty much every sport the SEC plays, it has high level in volleyball too. Kentucky won the national championship last year. You have lots of great programs in that sport. So, yeah, that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to volleyball being here on the Vanderbilt campus.
Any idea what the timeline looks like for hiring a coach, first season, all those things?
They said that later this year would be the timeline for hiring a coach. Now, as far as when the team will actually start playing, it'll be in 25-26. That's my understanding of how all that's going to work. So you got a little bit of time here before you actually start playing games. But I'm sure for whoever the first head coach is, it's going to feel like a short amount of time just to try to get everything together and get started.
So you say hiring, do you mean starting the looking at a coach process, or they hope to have one by the end of the year?
My understanding is they hope to have one by the end of the year, but we'll see how that goes. I mean, you still got a lot of 2022 left, so that was basically on what I read and I heard from Candace Lee when they made the announcement the other day.
So they'll have that coach will have a good 2-year ramp up. Yeah, which I guess is really good for recruiting. I mean, in that case, if you think about it that way, you can have hopefully a couple of classes locked down. I don't know what the recruiting cycle is for volleyball. I don't know if it's like baseball where they commit as freshmen or eighth graders, or if it's
no idea.
Or if it's more like football. But that's interesting. That's I would think, goodness, any more than that, you might almost get bored with sitting there wanting it to start. But
right, I know, waiting for your program to get going.
Right, that seems like a solid plan. So that'll be interesting to see. The other thing. There was an announcement on the basketball stuff this week, some more details that are coming out on timelines, maybe details with facilities. What sticks out is most interesting in all that?
The most interesting part about all of that is that they're going to build this big basketball facility in this little tiny space behind the north end zone at Vanderbilt Stadium, between their parking garages and Memorial Gym. I really enjoyed the chance to sit down with Candace Lee and with Al Harris, who's the lead architect on this project for Populous out in Kansas City. We sat down and we looked through the plans. We did a little video. You can find that at vucommodores.com. But he really detailed it all, and they talked about the thinking behind the building. But it's going to be a 4-level building, and you're going to have a level for each of the basketball programs. The men's program will be on the bottom level. The women's program will be on the higher level. but it's basically the same facilities for both. There's going to be gyms that are stacked on top of one another. Where usually you have a basketball facility, you have gyms are side by side or end to end, but on this one, they're going to be stacked on top of one another. And he talked about how the thought process and the design that all went into it. It was really, really interesting to me, and it made me wish I had been an architect. I told Alan when we got done, it's like, I wish I could do what you do. But it's a really cool building. It's going to be kind of a dual purpose in a way, because it's not just basketball facility. It'll have the weight rooms, nutrition areas, and all those things, and training areas. But then it'll also have some common space that will be shared with football, especially for game days, and some seating on that side that'll face the football field, face from that north end zone. And so, they'll be able to use it in a variety of ways. And it will also connect the two sides of the football stadium, and it will connect with Memorial Gym to make easy access to the players to go in and out, especially on game days. So it's a really, really neat project. I enjoyed looking at those things and going over the plans. And again, it maybe wish that I could design things like that. But I'm always amazed on projects like that you'll see the plans for it. And I was thinking back to when they built the football stadium, what was Adelphia Coliseum, and it's now Nissan Stadium. I remember seeing the plans for that and thinking, there is no way it's going to look like that. And when they got done, it looked exactly like that. Yeah. And so I always think those things are cool.
Yeah, I do too. Now, the connecting different parts, how is that going to work? Is there just going to be like a common walkway in front of the building that with the staircase to the ground level on the other ones, or how does that go?
Well, it'll, the building will fill up pretty much most of the end zone there.
Yeah.
From corner to corner, and then it will just have walkways that'll connect with a concourse on the stadium. And there'll be access to go up and down, and then as far as like how the floors are connected for the basketball facility, there's what they call a central spine that goes down the middle of it and has access to go up or down when you go in the building. My understanding was you might go in kind of on a middle level if you're entering the basketball facilities, and then you can go up for the women's basketball area and then down for the men's basketball area. But it was really neat to see how it all connected, and they really put a lot of thought into it, and you could tell it was a project they didn't just hastily throw together, but they made sure that it all connected the way they wanted it to.
I don't mean this in a bad way. It's just kind of funny. Like the joke has been for so many years about how everything is right there and so congested. And now they're going to manage to cram another few things into there too.
Yeah, it was funny. The day after we shot all that, and Tommy McClellan, the deputy athletic director, worked with us on doing the video the other day. And the day after we did all that, I was actually walking out of our office, and I walked out into that area beyond the north end zone where the video board is now. And I took a picture of it and I sent it to Tom, and he's like, man, I don't know how they're going to fit all this in there. I'm glad I'm not the one responsible for designing the thing. And he agreed. He laughed and agreed with me. But yeah, it's a pretty good sized building for a very small area. But that's why architects make the big bucks. They know what they're doing, figuring out how to make these things fit.
Well, and I think the key, you said 4 stories, because what's funny, you said this, and I think that was unintentional, about like, I don't know how they're going to fit it in such a small space, yet it's going to be the biggest or one of the biggest basketball facilities in the country?
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah, it's going to be a really unique facility, and one of the biggest. But yeah, it's like anything else. You think about building buildings in a downtown area. You don't build out, you build up. In this case, for Vanderbilt, that's what they're doing.
And then the next phase will be that other end zone where I guess they'll cut off Jess Neely at some point, and McGugan will change markedly, and that whole space will change too. I don't know where you are in terms of knowledge on that, but I think that's the next step.
Yeah, I know that's a big part of what they're doing. And at some point, there's going to be a major renovation of the McGugan Center and the football facilities and all that. But that's probably not too far down the road. I'll be interested to see how long until we see plans for those things. But yeah, the basketball facility is a big step in the Vandy United campaign.
Kevin, parting thoughts, any big stories we didn't cover in this podcast, anything coming up with your podcast or anything else that you'd like to announce? The floor is yours for that.
I just want to remind everybody on Monday nights at 6 o'clock, we've gone back to doing our Commodore Hour show live and in person at the Commodore Grill inside the Holiday Inn, Vanderbilt, just basically right next to Vanderbilt Stadium. So if you're over this way at 6 o'clock on Monday, come over and see us. Coach Tim Corbin will be with us from 6 to 6:30 each week. And then we're going to have a rotating group of guests for that second half hour of the show. So I really encourage people to come out and hang out with us. It's a nice place. You can have some food and some beverages, and then they have live music that comes on after Andrew and I are done. So we have to get our table moved out of the way so they can hook up the guitars and everything. But it's been fun to be back in person. We'll be doing that through the middle of May. So I encourage everybody to come out and see us.
Any guitar solos from you or Andrew?
That might be more of Andrew's territory than mine. I don't play any instruments, but I wish I did. Truth be told, when I was a kid, I didn't just want to be a play-by-play announcer. I really wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, but that didn't really work out. So maybe next time. Like, I wanted to stand on like a wall of 10-foot wall of amps and play like Eddie, but not everybody can do that.
I think there was only one Eddie Van Halen.
That's exactly right.
And we miss him. So, hey, Kevin, thanks a bunch for your time. We'll catch you again in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Chris. All the best to you, man.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk and MyPerfectFranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrislee70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.